one writing and narrating the tale of tales ever thus told? Oh my god, yes it was. Well, I was really, emphasis on the really angry. Like, I don't even remember what I was angry about, but I was really just, and usually when I'm angry, I take my frustration out on Lady, which is the character that I created that is not based off of a real person. A Lady represents everybody ever, who has ever, and who will ever hurt me in some way. Make me angry, make me sad, blah blah blah. She is a form of self-therapy, just like Anna's here is. So usually when I'm really angry, I take it out on Lady. But this time, I decided to do something a little differently, something I never do. And I decided to do something funny. So I opened up DeviantArt and enter text, and I wrote it straight from here on the enter text, and I just wrote down whatever came to mind. The first thing that came to my mind, that's what I wrote down. And the tale of tales ever thus told was born, and it was hilarious. I think the bloopers should say that enough. Where do you get your inspiration for your characters, creatures, etc. in Encephalon? Mostly from myself, but I will admit that there are outer things that inspire me to create characters. For instance, the novel I'm working on, the idea was originally going to be a dreary fanfiction, so the main character, Jay, is sort of based off of Harry, and one of the other main characters, Max, is sort of based off of Draco. The third main character, Kit, isn't really based on anyone. I just came up with him out of the blue. I was just like, yeah, gothic kind of kid with neon who likes black and neon green. It's awesome. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it, because obviously the novel isn't finished, and it's not going to be posted in narration. Honestly, only about a portion of the first chapter is going to be submitted onto DeviantArt and in narration form, and that's because I want to try and get it published. So, but, hint hint, it's 18 or over. It's erotic. But their personalities do differ in some ways. Inspirations. Obviously, Minky Pyre was inspired a little bit by Pinkamena in appearance because she is supposed to be her sister. Now, there are people who claim that Minky Pie is a fucking Pinkamena recolor, but I even spent my time and energy to prove it wrong and made a picture showing the obvious differences between Minky Pie and Pinkamena. And I actually think it's very stupid for somebody to look at Minky Pie for an exact amount of time, for a lengthy amount of time, and think that she's a recolor of Pinkamena. At first glance, yeah, but if you look at her, no, she's not a fucking recolor. But, of course, the image inspired me with all three of her sisters, with Minky, Inky, and Blinky. They all are based somewhat off of Pinkamena's appearance. Jan from Jan and All Evil Things Fuzzy was inspired from Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. So it really just depends where my inspiration comes from. Lately, with most Encephalon characters, my inspiration comes from different characteristics of mine. Like, for instance, you may not know this, but the Jisatsu brothers, for instance, represent my sort of guilty sexual pleasures that I have in this here brain of mine. Coda represents my fantasy self that I usually see in my dreams. In my dreams, I'm like fucking kick-ass and awesome. Like, I'm the shit. And that's what Coda is. He is the epitome of awesome. He is confident, he is cocky, he is sexy, and he is just the most amazing fucking dude in the fucking, on the fucking earth. And that's what I wish I was. Actually, my Reitanna fiction self is more of also what I wish I was, because Reitanna, cartoon Reitanna is a little more held together than I am. Evelyn is based purely on my manic self. Tenji is based on my love for color and craziness, but he also started out as a rocker because I am a rocker, and he also came out of the closet when I did, so he's bisexual and he's staying bisexual. Evelyn I've made pansexual because that goes with her personality, which is also, you know, something I derived from myself. So, Dr. Rotcod is, I have a fascination with medical science, but also obviously my fascination in horror. So I put those together. They say that oftentimes there are certain careers, I say a lot, that psychopaths usually gravitate towards. Towards isn't a word. Toward, and one of them is a doctor slash surgeon. It's usually a surgeon. So that's where Dr. Rotcod comes from, and you could tell with his craziness that he's psychotic because he's got that smile and those eyes and the backwards hands. Dead Molly actually represents me as a child. Of course, I wasn't dead or a zombie, but her mouth is stitched up, and she has a very vengeful spirit. Now, as a child, I really didn't speak much, partly because of my social anxiety, and mostly because if I spoke at the wrong time, I would get hit. So that's what the stitched up mouth comes from. And the fact that she's broken, but she had to sew herself back together because she was chopped up in pieces by the guy who murdered her. I was a broken child, and I'm still broken, but I've always just, during my entire life, been able trying to sew all the pieces back together and try to get myself together. But her vengeance also represents my my thirst for revenge on Aaron. But you know, that's her deal. I already said what Lady represents. There was a fly. Go away! The 4 aces, because they're assassins, and they sort of represent my thirst for justice. They're not vigilantes. Hanukkah is actually vigilante. But the aces are assassins, and it's really hard to describe this. You know what, I'm not explaining it anymore. You get it. Both Kodo and Lizzie represent my inner murderer. I don't just push my urges and my fantasies onto the bakers. I push them onto other characters, and Kodo and Lizzie are a very good representation of that. Evie doesn't necessarily represent anything in particular. She's just Evelyn's clone that appeared when I used to roleplay with Senpai. Oh, her name is Hanukkah, not Hanukkah. Hanukkah is also, you haven't seen much of Hanukkah. She's, like I said, a vigilante, so that need for justice. She's quiet, she doesn't usually speak, and when she does, she speaks in this unknown language that, resembles mainly Japanese, because that's the second language that I tried to learn, but it's just gibberish. Usually what I do is I just speak to give myself an example of how this language would be. I spoke in gibberish that sounded like Japanese, and then I reversed it. But you have to, when you speak to reverse something to make it sound more natural, you have to speak with a different inflection. I'm losing my voice. Senpai's a real person, Michael's a real person, Yapmis represents Senpai's illness. Oh, WBC. Wonton is sort of like my shy, slightly random kind of person. Chica is like the colorful, fashionable side of me. That's what I meant to say last time, but I said person? I don't know what I said. And then Blue is like the part of me that is really apathetic about certain things and honestly just makes me go, whatever, I really don't care. So she's like my apathetic bitchy side. And that's really all that I can think of right now. It's just a roundabout way of saying I hate sauerkraut, because that explanation was way too long.